He gave up everything for love, even his honor. But when the truth came out, the very love he fought for shattered his heart. Would you trade your soul just to win someone's heart? The drums of Mbale village echoed as the market women shouted their prices. Smoke from roasted plantain mixed with the smell of fresh palm wine. Life was busy, yet in the middle of the noise, Richard's heart beat for one thing only: love. He saw her first near the river. Anna, a young woman with laughter brighter than the morning sun. She carried water on her head, her steps graceful as if the earth itself respected her. To Richard, she was not just another villager. She was the reason his nights were restless. But Richard was not rich. He was a carpenter's son, known for fixing broken stools and patching roofs. Anna, on the other hand, was the daughter of a wealthy trader. Her father's compound had walls taller than most men, and guards at the gate. Everyone knew she would never look at a man like Richard. Still, Richard believed love could move mountains. He saved his coins, not to buy food, but to buy a single red rose from the city, a flower rare in Mbale. People mocked him. "Will you eat a rose, Richard?" They laughed, but Richard kept silent. His heart told him that love was worth any sacrifice. When Anna saw the rose, her eyes widened. "You brought this for me?" she asked, her voice soft as the evening wind. Richard nodded. His hands shook, but he smiled. "I would cross rivers, climb hills, and face storms just to see you smile." For the first time, Anna did not laugh at him. She touched the rose as though it carried magic. That night, Richard walked home, barefoot, hungry, but filled with hope. Yet whispers spread across the village. Some called him foolish. Others said, love that cost so much might break him. And in the shadows, Anna's father watched everything, his eyes cold as stone. He would never allow a poor carpenter's son to take his only daughter's heart. The moon lit the village of Mbale with silver light. Drums had gone silent, but whispers carried in the night. Richard lay awake, staring at the thatched roof above him. His mind was on Anna, the way her eyes shone when she held the rose. But not everyone shared his joy. Anna's father, Mr. Douglas, was a man who measured people not by their hearts, but by the weight of their pockets. He was known to say, "Respect is built on wealth, not on words." When he heard his daughter had accepted a rose from Richard, anger boiled in his chest. The next morning, as Anna ground millet in the courtyard, Mr. Douglas called her. His voice was heavy, like thunder before a storm. "Anna," he said, "I hear stories about you and that poor carpenter's son. Tell me it is a lie." Anna lowered her eyes. "Father, he is kind. He is different from the men who only see your riches. He gave me something no one else has ever given. A rose." Mr. Douglas laughed bitterly. "A rose? Will a rose build you a home? Will a rose feed your children? Listen to me carefully. If you ever shame this family by entertaining Richard, you will cease to be my daughter." Anna's heart pounded. Her father's words were knives, but deep inside, she also knew her heart was already tied to Richard. Later that evening, when Richard came secretly to the riverbank, Anna's eyes were wet with tears. "My father knows," she whispered. "He says he will disown me if I continue with you." Richard clenched his fists. The weight of his poverty pressed on him like a mountain, but his heart refused to give up. "Anna," he said, his voice trembling, "love is worth fighting for. I will prove to your father that I am more than a carpenter's son." Anna looked at him with both fear and hope. "Richard," Be careful. My father is not a man who forgives behind them, unseen in the tall grass. A pair of eyes glowed with anger. Mr. Douglas had followed his daughter. He heard every word. And as Richard walked home that night, hungry but determined, he did not know that his fight for love had just made him a dangerous enemy. The cock crowed 3 times, and the village of Mbale slowly woke. But Richard had already been awake since dawn. His father's old hammer lay in his hand, the wood worn smooth from years of labor. He stared at it with determination. If love must be tested by wealth, he whispered, then I will work until my hands bleed. From that day, Richard became a shadow of himself. He took on every job, mending broken roofs under the scorching sun, cutting firewood in the forest until his palms blistered, and carrying heavy loads in the market for traders who paid him almost nothing. The villagers shook their heads. Is he mad? One woman said. All this for a girl who may never marry him, another added. But Richard's heart had only one answer: Anna. One evening, after days of endless labor, he stood at her window with a small wooden box. Inside were silver earrings he had carved himself, polished until they shone like the moon. I made these for you, he said softly. They are not gold, but they carry my sweat and my soul. Anna touched them gently, tears filling her eyes. Richard, you are giving me more than gifts. You are giving me your life. But even as she admired them, a loud voice cut through the night. Anna! Her father stepped out of the shadows, his face burning with rage. He had been watching again. So this is the boy who thinks sweat is equal to silver and love is greater than wealth. Before Richard could speak, Mr. Douglas grabbed the wooden box and threw it to the ground. The earrings shattered. You dare to shame me in my own compound? Leave now before I break you as I broke your foolish gift. Richard's chest tightened, but he did not move. His eyes locked on Anna's. I will not stop, sir. I will prove to you that love is stronger than riches. Mr. Douglas's voice turned cold. Then prepare yourself, boy. Because if you keep crossing me, what breaks may not just be earrings, it may be you. Anna gasped, fear flooding her face. Richard left silently, his fists clenched. But inside him, fire was burning. That night, he made a dangerous decision. If ordinary labor could not win Mr. Douglas's respect, then he would take greater risks, risks that could either lift him above poverty or bury him forever. The sun burned hot over Mbale as Richard carried planks of wood to the market. His shirt clung to his back, soaked with sweat. He was exhausted, but his mind refused to rest. Every swing of the hammer, every drop of sweat, reminded him of Anna and of her father's voice, mocking his poverty. One afternoon, as he sat under a palm tree to catch his breath, 2 men approached him. They were strangers from the city, dressed in fine clothes that caught the eyes of the villagers. Their laughter was loud, their pockets heavy with coins. Carpenter boy, one of them said, why work like a donkey when wealth is waiting in the city? Richard frowned. What wealth? The taller man leaned closer. There are men in the city who need strong hands. Work for them a few months, and you will return with money enough to silence every man who looks down on you. The words hit Richard like a drumbeat. Money, respect, the very things Mr. Douglas demanded. That night, he told Anna of the offer. Her eyes widened with fear. Richard, city men are not always honest. What if they cheat you? What if you never return? Richard took her hand. Anna, this may be the only way. If I can return with riches, your father will see I am worthy." Anna's heart trembled, torn between love and fear. "Then promise me one thing," she whispered. "Promise me you will not lose yourself while chasing wealth." Richard nodded, though deep inside he was not sure he could keep that promise. The next morning, he left Mbale with the strangers, carrying nothing but his father's hammer and Anna's memory. The villagers watched him go. Some shook their heads in pity, others in envy. "Love has driven him mad," they said. The journey to the city was long and harsh. For days, Richard worked in construction sites, carrying stones heavier than his body, climbing walls higher than he had ever seen. He ate little, slept on bare floors, but his eyes always saw only one thing: Anna waiting at the river. Weeks passed, then months. Slowly, his pockets began to fill. Coins clinked in his bag, and hope grew in his chest. He dreamed of walking back into Mbale, with gifts that would silence Mr. Douglas forever. But just as his dream began to shine, a storm was gathering. The men who brought him had not revealed the full truth. The work was not only dangerous, it was deadly. And one mistake could cost Richard not just his dream, but his very life. The city of Ibarra was nothing like Mbale. Its streets never slept. Its air was heavy with smoke and shouting traders, and its buildings reached high into the sky. For Richard, it felt like stepping into another world. At first, he worked with fierce energy. He carried bricks, mixed cement, hammered nails. The pay was small, but more than he had ever earned in the village. He told himself, every coin is a step closer to Anna. But soon, the truth of the city work revealed itself. One morning, he was ordered to climb a tall building under construction. The wind blew hard, dust filling his eyes. His legs shook as he balanced on wooden planks high above the ground. His hammer slipped once, nearly costing him his life. "Move faster," the foreman shouted. "You are not paid to be afraid." Richard swallowed his fear and kept going. All he could see was Anna's smile at the riverbank. All he could hear was her father's mocking words. "Will a rose build you a home?" Then it happened. A rope snapped. A heavy block of wood swung across the site. Richard turned, too late. The blow struck his shoulder, and he fell hard to the ground. Pain seared through his body, blood dripping from his arm. For a moment, everything went black. When he opened his eyes, he was lying on the cold floor. Other workers gathered around him. Some whispered that he was lucky to be alive. The foreman scowled. "You rest today. Tomorrow, you climb again." Richard's whole body ached, but his heart burned hotter than his wounds. "I cannot stop," he muttered. "If I give up now, Anna will be lost to me forever." That night, as he lay on his mat, he clutched the small pouch of coins he had saved. His hands were bloody, his body broken, but his heart refused to quit. Yet even in the silence of the night, doubt crept in. Was he chasing love or destroying himself? Back in Mbale, Anna sat by the river, staring at the moon. She had heard nothing from Richard for months. Her father pressed harder, introducing her to wealthy suitors from the city. "Forget that carpenter," Mr. Douglas insisted. "He will never return with what you need." But Anna's heart whispered otherwise. She prayed each night, "God, keep him safe. Let him not lose himself for my sake." As the moon hung over both the city and the village, Richard and Anna were bound by hope, pain, and silence. But shadows were gathering fast, for the men who brought Richard into the city had more plans for him, and not all of them were honest. Richard's shoulder still throbbed from the fall, but within days he was back on the scaffolds, hammering, lifting, and sweating under the merciless sun. His pouch of coins grew heavier, yet the weight in his heart grew heavier too. One evening, after the workers had left, the two strangers who had first brought him to the city called him aside. Their smiles were sharp, their eyes colder than before. "Richard," the taller one said, "you are strong, but strength alone cannot buy a future. Do you want real money? The kind that will silence Anna's father forever?" Richard frowned. "What do you mean?" The second man leaned closer, his voice low. "Not all riches come from sweat. Some come from smart hands, hands willing to do what others fear." He pulled out a bag filled with gold chains and rings. The shine almost blinded Richard. "These are not from honest work," Richard whispered. The man laughed. "And what has honest work given you? Blisters, blood, pain? Join us, and in 1 month you will have more than a year of carrying bricks." Richard's heart pounded. He thought of Anna's tears, of her father's warnings, of his own promise to prove himself. Could he turn away when wealth was right in front of him? That night, Richard could not sleep. His father's voice echoed in his memory. "A man's honor is worth more than gold. Do not sell your soul for coins." But then Anna's father's voice followed. "Respect is built on wealth, not words." By dawn, Richard's decision was clear, at least in his heart. He would never steal. He would never bring shame to his family's name. When the strangers asked again, Richard shook his head firmly. "No, if my hands must bleed, let it be from honest work, not crime." Their smiles vanished. The taller man's eyes narrowed like a snake. "Be careful, carpenter boy. In this city, those who refuse us often regret it." Richard walked away, but fear crawled down his spine. He had made enemies. Meanwhile, in Mbale, Mr. Douglas grew impatient. He brought Anna before the elders, declaring that she must soon choose a husband. "This Richard you wait for is chasing shadows," he sneered. "Wealthy men stand at your door while you waste time on a poor dreamer." Anna lifted her head bravely. "Father, I will not marry for gold. I will marry for love." Her words shocked the crowd. Some elders nodded with respect. Others whispered against her. But Mr. Douglas's face hardened like stone. "Then you are no longer my daughter," he spat. Anna's heart broke, but she did not take her words back. Far away in the city, Richard felt the same storm in his soul. He had rejected easy riches, but the price of honesty was high. And now, unknown to him, danger was already following his steps. Richard's days in the city grew heavier. His shoulder ached, his hands were rough with scars, yet his pouch of coins slowly grew. Each evening, he counted the money, whispering to himself, "This will prove me worthy of Anna." But unknown to him, the men he had rejected were watching closely. They did not forgive easily. One night, as Richard left the worksite, 3 figures stepped from the shadows. Their faces were hidden, but he recognized the voices. "You should have listened, carpenter boy," one hissed. Before Richard could react, a fist struck his face. He stumbled, the pouch of coins spilling into the dirt. Kicks and blows rained on him, each one fueled by anger. The men took his coins, laughing as they vanished into the night. Richard lay in the dust, blood dripping from his lips. His body shook with pain, but his heart broke harder than his bones. Months of sweat and sacrifice were gone in one cruel moment. When he finally crawled back to his sleeping mat, his spirit felt crushed. He thought of Anna, of her father's scorn, of the villagers' laughter. "Foolish Richard," they would say, chasing love with empty hands. For the first time, He wondered if it was all worth it. Meanwhile, in Mbale, Anna sat by the river, holding the broken earrings Richard had once carved. Her father's anger still burned, but she held on to hope. She whispered into the night, "Richard, do not give up. Do not let this world steal your heart." Back in the city, as Richard lay in pain, a kind old woman found him. She was a food seller who had often watched him work. She cleaned his wounds and gave him a bowl of porridge. "Son," she said softly, "love is a fire. It can warm you, but if you are not careful, it will burn you to ashes. Do not destroy yourself for what cannot be forced." Richard closed his eyes. Her words sank deep, yet his heart still clung to Anna. "I cannot stop," he whispered, "even if it breaks me." The old woman shook her head sadly. "Then be ready, because the path you walk is full of traps, and the men you angered are not finished with you yet." And she was right, for even as Richard tried to recover, the strangers were planning something worse. He had chosen honor over crime, but in the city of Ibarra, honor made him a target. Richard's wounds healed slowly, but the wound in his heart remained open. Every time he looked at the empty space where his coins once were, he felt a sharp sting of shame. Months of sweat, blood, and hunger had been stolen in one night. The old woman who had helped him often came by, bringing food when she could. "Richard," she said one evening, "go home. Your life is worth more than this endless fight. Love should not cost you everything." But Richard shook his head. "If I return empty-handed, Anna's father wins. I will not be remembered as the fool who gave up." His stubbornness grew, and desperation soon followed. One afternoon, as he worked on the site, a young man approached him. His clothes were dirty, his eyes restless. "I saw what happened to you," he said. "Those men are thieves, but I know a way you can recover what you lost." Richard frowned. "How?" The young man leaned closer. "There's a place in the city where men gamble. Many have walked in poor and walked out rich. One night they could give you enough to silence even the proudest father-in-law." Richard hesitated. His father's voice echoed in his mind. "A man who chases quick riches will stumble into ruin." But then Anna's face appeared in his heart, her tears, her hope, her faith in him. That night, Richard walked into the gambling house. The room was filled with smoke, laughter, and the clink of coins. Men shouted over cards and dice, while others slammed cups of palm wine on the tables. Richard's heart raced. He had only a few coins left, barely enough for food. But the voice in his head whispered, "This is your chance." At first, luck smiled. The dice rolled in his favor, the coins multiplied, and hope returned to his chest. He imagined Anna's smile when he returned with enough to prove himself. But the city had sharp teeth. As the night dragged on, his luck turned. One roll, then another, and his coins began to vanish. His breath grew heavy. His hands shook. "Just one more chance," he muttered. Just one more roll." By dawn, he had nothing. Not a coin, not a meal. Nothing but the echo of laughter from men who watched him lose everything. Stumbling into the streets, Richard fell to his knees. His clothes were torn, his eyes hollow. He had traded his last hope for dust. Meanwhile, back in Mbale, Anna's father tightened his grip. "Enough waiting," Mr. Douglas declared. "You will marry the merchant from Ibarra. His wealth will secure this family's future." Anna's heart shattered, but she stood firm. "Father, I would rather remain unmarried than sell my heart." Her defiance drew whispers in the village, some praising her courage, others mocking her foolishness. But far away in the city, Richard was a broken man. Hungry, penniless, and haunted by failure, he faced the darkest question of his journey. Was love worth the ruin of his life? The streets of Ibarra swallowed Richard like a wounded bird. His steps dragged, his eyes hollow. Hunger gnawed at his belly, shame burned in his chest. He had nothing left. No coins, no friends, no hope. He wandered the alleys for days, sleeping under broken carts, drinking water from public wells. The once strong carpenter's son looked like a beggar now. Children mocked him, traders pushed him aside, and no one remembered the boy who once dreamed of love. One evening, as he sat weakly beside the market, the kind old woman found him again. She placed a loaf of bread in his hands. "Richard, you are killing yourself," she said softly. "Go home. Love that destroys you is not love, it is a prison." Tears filled Richard's eyes. He broke the bread with trembling hands. "Mama, I cannot face her father with empty hands. I would rather die here than return a failure." The old woman sighed. "Then remember my words. If you keep chasing shadows, you will lose the light that is still in you." That night, as Richard lay staring at the stars above the city, he whispered Anna's name. "Forgive me if I never return." Back in Mbale, Anna was fighting her own battle. Her father had announced her marriage to the wealthy merchant. Preparations had already begun. Drums were being tuned, palm wine brewed, and goats tied for slaughter. But Anna's heart refused. She ran to the elders. "Richard may be poor," she said, her voice trembling but strong, "but he is the one I love. If marriage is forced upon me, it will not be marriage but a prison." The elders argued. Some sided with Mr. Douglas, saying a father's word must stand. Others whispered that Anna's courage was rare, that a woman's heart should not be sold. The village buzzed with division, and in the middle of it all, Mr. Douglas grew angrier. "Let her talk," he spat. "When she sees her Richard return with nothing but dust, her foolishness will end." But fate was weaving its own path. For on the very night Richard thought of giving up, he stumbled into the same men who had robbed him. This time, they were not laughing. They were being chased by city guards for their crimes. In the chaos, one of them dropped a heavy bag. Gold coins spilled into the dirt, shining under the moonlight. Richard froze. His hands shook as he stared at the wealth he had long prayed for. No one was watching. The guards ran past him, chasing the thieves deeper into the night. The bag lay at his feet, glowing like a trap. He bent down slowly, his heart torn in two. His father's voice thundered in his head. "A man's honor is worth more than gold." But then Anna's father's words returned. "Respect is built on wealth, not on words." His breath came heavy. His hands trembled. If he picked it up, he could return to Mbale as a wealthy man, ready to silence every insult. If he left it, he would remain a beggar, broken and forgotten. The bag of gold lay before Richard, heavy with temptation. The night was quiet, except for his own trembling breath. The city guards had vanished, chasing the thieves deeper into the alleys. No one saw him. No one would know. He knelt slowly, his hands hovering above the coins. "With this, I can marry Anna. With this, I can silence her father." His heart beat like a drum. But another voice whispered in his chest, "Gold stolen will never build a home of peace. It will build a house of tears." Richard closed his eyes. Sweat ran down his face. His father's hammer weighed heavily at his side, a reminder of honest labor. Yet Anna's face floated before him, bright and soft. The thought of losing her tore at his soul. Finally, with a cry of pain, he grabbed the bag. The coins jingled, their sound both sweet and poisonous. "I will not lose her," he whispered fiercely, "even if it means losing myself." The next morning, Richard returned to Mbale. His clothes were torn, his body weak, but his hands carried the bag of gold. The villagers gathered, gasping in surprise. "Is that the carpenter's son? He has returned with riches." He walked straight to Mr. Douglas's compound. The wealthy trader was preparing for Anna's wedding when Richard dropped the bag of gold at his feet. "Here is proof," Richard said hoarsely. "I am not the beggar you mocked. I am worthy of Anna." The crowd murmured. Some cheered, others frowned with suspicion. Mr. Douglas bent and touched the coins, his eyes widening. He could not deny their shine, but his heart still burned with pride. "So you finally found wealth," he said coldly. "Tell me, boy, how did you earn it?" Richard froze. The truth clawed at his throat. Should he lie? Should he claim hard labor? Or confess the gold was not truly his? Before he could answer, Anna ran forward, her eyes filled with tears as she touched his face. "Richard, you came back," she whispered. But in her heart, she saw the hollowness in his eyes. He was not the same man who once gave her a rose at the river. Something inside him was broken. The villagers cheered his return, but whispers spread. Where did he get such wealth? Can coins so sudden ever be clean? Richard stood in the middle of the noise, Anna's hand in his, the bag of gold at his feet. For a moment, it seemed he had won. He had silenced his enemies, returned a victor. But deep inside, he felt the truth burning. The drums of celebration echoed through Mbale, villagers danced, palm wine flowed, and voices shouted Richard's name. He had returned from the city a man of wealth, and with the bag of gold, he seemed unstoppable. But Richard's heart was not dancing. His smile was forced, his spirit restless. Every time the coins clinked, he remembered the night he picked them from the dirt. He remembered the guards chasing the thieves. He remembered the warning, "Gold stolen will never build a home of peace." Anna clung to his side, her eyes shining with relief. "You came back for me. That is all that matters." Her words warmed him, but guilt stabbed deeper. For the first time, Richard wished he could undo his choice. 3 days later, news spread like wildfire. City guards had arrived in Mbale, searching for stolen gold. The same thieves who had dropped the bag were captured. Under questioning, they confessed everything. They lost one bag during the chase, the guards said. It must have fallen into someone's hands. The villagers gasped. Whispers grew louder. Eyes turned toward Richard. Mr. Douglas smirked. "Ah, so this is the truth behind his sudden wealth." He stood before the elders, his voice heavy with triumph. "I said it before. Respect is not built on words. Look at the boy you defend. He is nothing but a thief in disguise." The elders called Richard to speak. The whole village gathered. Anna clutched his arm, trembling. "Tell them, Richard. Tell them it isn't true." Richard's lips quivered. His voice cracked. "I did not steal, but the gold, it was not earned. I found it on the streets of Ibarra. I was desperate. I wanted only to prove myself worthy." The crowd erupted in shock. Some shouted insults, others groaned in disappointment. The joy of 3 days turned into scorn. Anna's tears flowed. She had defended him, believed in him, but now the truth was clear. He had traded his honor for her hand. The chief elder rose. His voice was stern but sorrowful. Richard, a man without wealth, can still build a life. But a man without integrity cannot build a home. You should have trusted patience, not lies. Richard fell to his knees, his tears mixed with the dust. Forgive me. I only wanted love. Mr. Douglas's laughter pierced the air. And now you have nothing. No wealth, no respect, no future. The guards seized the bag of gold and left. The villagers walked away one by one, shaking their heads. Only Anna remained beside Richard, weeping. She held his face in her palms. You broke my heart, Richard. Not because you are poor, but because you lost yourself. Her words cut deeper than any insult. For the first time, Richard realized he had fought for love in the wrong way, and in trying to win Anna, he had lost himself. That night, under the same stars where he once prayed, he whispered again, but this time not to Anna. Father in heaven, if love is real, give me strength to walk in truth, even if it costs me everything. The village of Mbale was quiet. Days had passed since the gold was taken away, but whispers still clung to Richard like shadows. Where once children ran to greet him, now they crossed the road. Where once men shared their food with him, now they turned their backs. He had become a ghost in his own village. Richard spent his days by the riverbank, staring at his reflection in the water. His heart ached, not for the lost gold, but for the look in Anna's eyes when she said, "You lost yourself." Those words haunted him more than hunger ever had. One evening, as the sun set red across the sky, Anna came to him. She sat beside him, her eyes swollen from crying. For a long while, they said nothing. Only the river spoke, carrying their silence away. Finally, Anna whispered, "Richard, I loved you because of your heart, not your wealth. But the moment you chose lies over truth, you broke something I cannot mend." Richard's tears fell freely. "Anna, I would rather die than see you in another man's arms. I was blinded by fear. I thought gold would give me what my hands could not." She shook her head softly. "I begged my father to see your worth. I believed in you. But love cannot stand on gold that was never clean. It will crumble like sand." Her words were not angry, only sad. She rose to leave. Richard reached for her hand, but she pulled it away gently. "I will marry who my father chooses. But know this, if you had trusted the truth, if you had waited, I would have stood by you through every storm." And just like that, she walked away, her figure fading into the twilight. Richard collapsed into the dust. His chest burned, his soul shattered. For the first time, he did not cry Anna's name. He cried for himself, for the man he could have been, for the honor he had thrown away. Seasons passed. Anna was married to the wealthy merchant, her life comfortable, but not filled with the laughter she once shared with Richard. She often looked at the river and remembered the boy who had given her a simple rose. Richard remained in Mbale, slowly rebuilding his life with nothing but his father's hammer. The villagers still mocked him, but he worked silently, day after day. He was no longer chasing love. He was chasing redemption. Yet his heart never healed. He had loved with everything. But the crazy things he did for love had broken him beyond repair. Still, his story lived on. Parents told it to their children at night. Love is not proven by gold or gifts. Love is proven by patience, honesty, and a heart that refuses to bend to lies. A man may lose wealth and still be a man, but if he loses his integrity, he loses everything. And so Richard's name became a warning in Mbal, not because he was poor, not because he failed, but because he showed what happens when love is built on broken foundations. The river carried his pain, the wind carried his lesson, and the people of Mbali never forgot. Dear viewers, what lesson did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear from your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and hit the subscriber button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.